I'm sharing with you an insight that I came up with from our own AI clone, that if you don't help people know how to ask it the best questions and interact with it in the most meaningful way, it becomes marginalized. So people need help to get started reaping the fullest emotional and psychological benefit that it can offer them, because on their own they maybe don't know how.
Well, everyone, thank you very much for joining us again to the Digital Legacy Podcast. My name is Daniel Sanchez, CEO of Reekolect, and I'm here today with a very special guest, Jay Abraham. Jay, thank you so much for joining us
Daniel,
today.
my pleasure. I'm looking forward to exploring topics we haven't talked about
Yes.
before, and also maybe giving some perspective. So have at me, okay?
Absolutely. Well, I want to start off first with giving our audience a little bit about your accomplishments and accolades here,
Yep.
right? Just a couple bullet points here. So, first of all, for the audience that doesn't know Jay Abraham, first of all, a renowned business executive, marketing strategist, and consultant known as the $21.7 billion man, founder and CEO of the Abraham Group, recognized by Forbes as top 5 executive coach in the United States in 2000, has helped over 10,000 clients across 400 plus industries worldwide, generating billions in business growth, an expert in identifying overlooked business opportunities and hidden assets, author of notable books like Getting Everything You Can Out of All You've Got, a global keynote speaker who has presented in countries like China, Singapore, London, and Tokyo, and consultant to major companies including Microsoft, FedEx, and General Electric. Wow, that's incredible, Jay.
Long career, Daniel, long career.
Absolutely. So, Jay, I want to first start off. Let's first start off in the beginning. As we look at all these amazing accomplishments that you've done, I'd like to know a little bit more an insight about who Jay was when you first started. Like, let's just say childhood. Did you have a certain way of thinking? Who were you? If we were sitting in, let's say, high school class, what was your personality like?
Uh, it was always, I would say, creatively. I was pretty much a maverick. I mean, I wasn't very good student, but I was very curious about lots of things. I was into creative writing, but when I got married, I was very young. I was 18, and I had 2 kids by 20, and nobody cared. I had no education. I had the need, pardon me, Daniel, of somebody, I don't know, probably 40, and the world didn't care. And the only people that would give me opportunity were crazy entrepreneurs, but they would always give me no salary, but an eat what you kill type of a situation, which means if you perform and you produce revenue, you share. If you don't, you starve.
Mhm.
So I basically, and by the way, it was never based on time. They could care if I spend 1 minute or 24 hours. They just wanted results. So when you don't have any constraints, you can do many things concurrently because nobody cares. So I always did 5 to 10 things at a time. And luckily, and this was what really defined my career after I did this, I did never the same industry. So if I did 10 things, 10 separate industries, after a while, I realized, wow, Industry A doesn't have a clue how Industry B or C or D thinks. They don't sell the same way. They don't market the same way. Their strategies are totally different. Their distribution channels are different. Their models are different. But you could borrow success approaches from one industry that are common as dirt. You could combine them with a couple other industry concepts and create a hybrid that you then gave to an industry where everyone else did the same thing the same way. And all of a sudden it was explosive, it was game changing. And I became basically an emissary of sorts. I was the one eyed man in the land of the blind. I could take very common concepts I'd been introduced to from industry A, B, C, D, and then introduce it to D, E, or F, where no one ever knew it, and we just exploded. And that was the beginning of my real career growth. And when I realized the power of it, then I went on a mission to learn everything I could about everything I could in terms of marketing, revenue generation, sales, preemptive advantage, competitive advantage, all kinds of things, partnering, distribution channel maximization, optimization, all things like that. And if you fast forward 50 years later, I've done a lot of it, so I have a little bit of an understanding.
Understood. So you essentially were able to look at these different industries and find like a formula that could be applied to each and every single one of these industries and then essentially be successful.
Yeah, but it was a little bit more sophisticated. I could take elements from many formulas and combine them into universal principles that could be adapted to any industry, particularly industries that didn't even use any of it. And it would give the client of mine that I basically taught it to significant performance advantage over everybody
Advantages.
else that was doing pretty much the same thing. Everyone
Wow.
else was following the herd. My clients were just breaking out, and it was very easy to produce the Icy Hots, the Entrepreneur magazines, the Agora publishings. I mean, just tons of other businesses we've had influence on. But it's not that I was that great. It's just that they were so stuck in doing the same thing as everybody else.
And you had this clarity that they could do something different, and that's
Mhm.
amazing. That's amazing. So, on that same note, talk to me a little bit about how technology played a role during this evolution, where you were finding out these
That's
different
interesting.
elements.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm I'm gonna probably disappoint your audience because of my lack of terrible sophistication today. But ironically, as I was going through, I was very sophisticated. You're too young, but I was involved when it was called Watts telephone marketing was really in vogue. You would be able to buy specific access to specific access to specific geographic areas in the country. It was called bands. You could have band one, two, three, four, five, seven. Band seven was the whole country. Band five was the center. Band one was the contiguous state. And we were on the cutting edge of telephone marketing when it was ethical, when it was very effective, and nobody else was doing it. We had automatic typewriters when nobody else did. When I was starting, we had photo electric readers. You would have a paper, literally a paper tape, and it would literally, you'd punch, it'd have punch holes in it, and it would read on an IBM Selectric, and it would just type the letter over and over again, and you'd customize it. I had one of my clients had the first. It was called an I can't remember OS something, but it was an automatic typing machine that could do 60,000 letters a day.
Wow.
And then we had auto pens that would sign it. And I was on the cutting edge of what I would call today very basic technology methodology that was used to optimize performance, communication, sequential leverage, and it was very good. Then I also understood highest and best use theory, which was understanding all the interrelated levers in somebody's revenue system. Most people don't understand there's 20 to 50 different interrelated factors that connect to start by targeting an audience and end by having either the first sale or all the sales, and in between you can make every one of the interrelated leverage points perform better, and that's how you get exponential growth. It's a little more sophisticated.
Right.
It's sort of it's geometry melded to quantum physics, but I learned about that when I was about 30, and it just transformed my ability to help businesses explode also.
Okay, absolutely. And what about the internet? Did the internet ever, was that one moment where you said, okay, this thing is being introduced to the world, this is going
Yeah,
to reshape marketing?
it was. And when it first came out, we were a leading force. I would lie if I told you it was as significant of a part of my life anymore because I do all kinds of companies around the world as far as advisory. But when it first came out, I had helped everybody who had databases.
Hmm.
So I had access to everybody's email list, everybody's website had my resources on it. Everybody was promoting me. We were basically we owned for about 3 years the whole market because I had helped so many people who were in my debt, and they also had massive databases. So it was really wonderful for me. But then as it evolved, I sort of throttled back because everybody and their brother became an
Yeah, that's true.
influencer, a self-anointed expert. Uh, they and they became very adroit at technological promotion. A lot of really cool things came into being. But retargeting and pop-ups and this and
That's
that. So
right.
it became very interesting. But I became very jaundiced about being in that field just because there were so many interlopers who were selling crap. But yeah, but I was early in the game, and we were very, very significant for many years. And I chose to not really be as active in that genre anymore. But yeah, it's transformatic. It really, it used to be that the only way you could control a market is if you had a lot of capital, which I did, and you had access to audiences, which I did because I'd helped so many people that I had endorsers and co-branding partners all over the world. Today, it's like a Wild West. It's a free form for
It is.
anybody, and if you know how to market better, even if you don't have a good product, you can own mind share. And sadly, it's not a question you're asking, but I'll give you an answer to a question that maybe people should ask. The poor audience isn't discriminating enough that they even know how to choose.
Hmm.
You can fake reviews, you can fake news, you can fake, and not even one way or the other. It doesn't matter what you're political or you're religious. You can fake everything, and the audience is so inclined to believe that it's very sad because quality and superiority in value and contribution and ability, if you're teaching, if you're providing expertise, the audience doesn't always know. If you're providing products and it's not a generic product, in other words, if I want to buy a Ford, I'm going to try to just get the best deal. But if I'm going to get something that's proprietary, I don't really know why you're better than she. And if she's a better, there's a she over there, you don't see her. If she's a better promoter online than I am, then she might win, even if my product
Right.
is a much better either value or much better performance. And that's a very sad indictment of where I think it's turned to. I think it started out very, very wonderful. Also, I'll tell you something very fascinating. When I was in it, I mean, I'm old enough to remember the first cell phone.
Right.
I'm old enough to remember when uh, faxes and Xerox first came out. I'm old enough to remember when the internet first started. And I think it's very sad that people have gotten to where that has become their dependency
Right.
factor. But that's another question. Ask away.
Well, I think that that kind of accomplishes two questions that with one question you can answer two questions we have. So, what do you think is a result of that? Could we blame it on social media? And how do you feel now, social media being the new technology, also coupled and married with now with AI?
Yeah.
How do you think? Because you've seen these waves, much like you're saying, the internet, faxes, Palm Pilots, then you had the personal computers and everything that just came all together. So to your point, it really changes the way marketing can happen, but also you're saying that it also to the consumer, it really kind of deteriorates their ability to be able to determine, what's really premium quality or good.
I think a lot of them have lost the ability to discriminate, and they have gained the ability to overtrust. There's an overtrust and an undertrust. They don't trust dealing with anybody, but they trust, I think, the wrong sources to get their not just their knowledge and their news, but their belief system. And I think the combination is very, excuse me, it's very dangerous. And I think it doesn't augur well for the future unless we get, our rationale and our discriminatory powers better, not discriminating like against a culture or an ethnicity, but discriminating in who we value and our ability to perform meaningful due diligence. I don't think
Mhm.
most people really know how to do that anymore.
Well, absolutely. I can agree with that. I can see that angle. Absolutely. The next question I'd like to ask you, which will lead on to the rest of our podcast, AI. Now, this is the biggest craze. I'm sure you've seen all different types of
I
ideas
have.
really spawning out. What's your take on that? And are you, as Jay Abraham, using AI?
The answer is, I mean, I'll answer the latter first and the first second.
Sure.
So, yes, I am, but nowhere close to as significantly as I could. I use something like I'll use ChatGPT 4 as a thinking partner.
Right.
I'll ask it questions anytime I'm thinking about a issue that I'm thinking, oh, I don't know the answer, or I wonder if I'll just go there.
Define the
Yeah,
idea.
and I found that if you understand how to really master very, very specific and probative prompts, excuse
Prompts, right.
me, you get great answers.
Right.
If you ask very superficial questions, it's a waste.
Right. It hallucinates.
Yeah, and different ones are better for, ChatGPT is good for one thing. Claude is good for something. I'm in the process, which is sad, of unsubscribing with perplexity because every time I ask it a deep question, it can't answer it. And I'm probably not using it correctly, but it's different ones. The thing I think is very important and depends on who you are. If you're an entrepreneur, which is the world that I frequent, most people right now they'll discuss AI as it applies to marketing or selling or optimizing leads. But and I just brought this because I had it compiled and I haven't really looked at it for a while, but there's probably 100 other ways to use it. If you're a business owner, you can use it for predictive analysis. You can do it for fraud detection. You can use it for product development. You can use it for risk management. You can use it for supply chain management, talent acquisition. I got like hundreds of ways you can use it they don't really usually talk about.
Mm,
But most people go, hey, you can use AI to write ads, and you can.
you can.
You can use AI to create marketing, and you can. You can use it for content, and you can. But that's all marketing based. If you run a holistic business, which is not holistic, but you look at all the facets of you can use AI for many things below that revenue surface. And I think that's exciting. That's very exciting. I think that the problem is I use it for research. Every time I've asked it to write ads for me, it comes up with ads that are very superficial.
Right.
It doesn't have the ability, I think, to put yet enormous personality and emotion in it.
Doesn't resonate, I think.
Yeah, and it lies.
Right.
So you got to basically ask it a lot of different questions to corner it to be able to come up with the truth. Sometimes I'll want purposely, I'll say, give me 25 ways to do this, and it'll give me 10 and stop. And then I'll say, no, I want 20, give me the other 15. And then it'll go into repetitive mode. And then I'll say, okay, we're going to try this again. And you almost have to teach it like it was a child
Right.
and not not get exasperated, but most people are acceptance of the first rendering,
Hmm.
and that's usually it's not crap, excuse my language, but it's
It's not
way
defined. Right.
yeah. I mean, you got to be able to take it deeper and deeper. I have a friend who started using Chat GPT to understand himself. He puts every one of his very most private thoughts in. He's kept journals for 20 years. He's put those in, and he's world class at prompts, and prompts are the key.
Hmm.
It's not accessing the AI, it's how you take it very clinically and
Right.
very precisely and very deeply into directively giving you very concrete scenario specific answers. And I don't think most people know how to do it. They'll ask us, I want to know, I want to know what's the best trip I can take to New Orleans or something. Instead of giving it, I love, I love spicy gourmet food. I want to go to Michelin restaurants. I want to do this. I want to always stay at a place that is only 3 minutes from. The more you give it the criteria, its intelligence is profound. The more you accept it to give you a superficial answer, I think the value is very little. And I was telling you this, we have a new AI clone that we've been working on for almost a year. We've put 250 million words in it so
Wow.
far, and we're going to do another 250 million words. And when I was looking at the first demo, the person who was from the technology company started asking it superficial questions. I'm known for a lot of different methodologies. So it would say, give me give me a short course understanding on the strategy preeminence. And I would almost be bored to death. But if you ask it very, very precisely scenario specific, like I want to know how I can take the strategy preeminence, apply it to my medical practice in a way that both is going to produce better marketing and better patient interaction and better referrals and more trust. And I need to know that right away because I'm dealing with 1,000 patients a month. Can you give me in a hierarchy? That's really cool.
That's where you train it. Right.
But most people don't even go anywhere close to that. And they get an answer and they run with
And
it,
they're
which is it. I come from a world, Daniel, of learning there's a difference between mediocrity and optimal and exponential. And you can even, if you study quantum physics, there are 5 gradients of performance above and beyond exponential. It's called hyper operationalization. What are they? Heptation, pentation, octation. There's another tation, I don't remember. But you can take performance like to infinity and beyond. And most people accept things at the baseline of superficiality. And that's always driven me crazy. That's what my whole career has been based on.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Well, Jay, let's take a quick little break and we'll come right back to jump on that. All right. So, welcome back. So, we're here with Jay Abraham. So, Jay, thank you for giving us the insight on
My worldview. Okay, good.
So, thank you so much. I wanted to go ahead and pivot now and just touch a little bit on what Reekolect's doing in memory preservation. Essentially, aside from our social preservation network and wanting to essentially have a dedicated platform where people can share their memories, connect with loved ones. And those social media is doing that. There's just so much. It's so convoluted, so crowded with extra content that really is taken away from what the vision is to truly preserve our memories now, leveraging advanced technologies like AI. So for instance, one of our flagship feature is that you can now input video with audio and we can recreate a deceased loved one that you can interact. And it has a set of structured questions where it knows the individual, to your point where you were talking about being very granular about, teaching it and educating on who the individual is. And then the rest is also a hybrid model that uses an LLM to be able to determine personality and fluidly talk. What are your ideas on using AI for memory preservation? So essentially having like digital immortality.
I think it has more therapeutic value than people think. I think today uh, human beings are very insular. I don't think they have a lot of connectivity. One of my colleagues is the number one authority on attention deficit. Uh, he's a famous doctor, and he says that people that are ADD, which represents many, if not all, of the highest performers, they need more vitamin C, which is connection. Now, his reference is human connection to live human beings, but I think that we've lost our, what's the word I would use? If you look at your genealogy and you look at your history, our parents, our relatives, they forged a lot of who we are, assuming we had a positive, healthy upbringing.
Mhm.
If we didn't, I don't know that we'd want to remind ourselves, but if you had a loving father, mother, aunt, uncle, grandmother, grandfather, and now they're no longer of this earth, if you could recreate them in a way that would give you inspiration, solace, uh, humor when you needed it, and they became, I'll call it, not your thinking partners, but uh, your sources of humanity and connectivity. I think it's really wonderful. I have my wife and I. Neither of us have any of our relatives left alive. We have only a few remaining in on this earth, and I always reflect on, as you get older, you reflect on different scenarios from your past where it's really touching. A parent did this, or a fun thing, or a sad thing, or a thing they said over and over
A
again.
joke
It
recipe.
becomes, as you get older, it becomes more and more obscure to where it's totally gone. And that part of your life, that part of your connectivity, that part of your being, that part of your character, unfortunately, it gets eviscerated. It becomes gone. And that cuts a hole out of, I think, your humanity. If you can regain that connection to those wonderful people in your life that forged who you are, the positive ones, and again, I think it's maybe you had a bad relationship and you want, I don't know that this is true, but maybe you want to get even and you want to create one that you can just go, oh, you asshole, oh, you're disgusting, you beat me up, you did this. But I think the majority of them will probably be, I think therapeutically, it will reconnect people and give them more animation in their spirit, more emotional grounding. I think a lot of people are very private today, and they live in their head. They don't share what's on their mind with their loved ones, their friends, their coworkers. But if you could reconnect with those people from your life who had the most positive influence on you, they were your mentors, they were your parents, they were your guiding forces, and you had them to turn to at regular times. If you had your mother or father, if you had a loving relationship, every morning give you an inspiration. If you're having a bad day, you could go talk to them and they'd say, "Get back on the horse, Daniel." If you had somebody who had a very wonderful sense of metaphoric phrases, if you had somebody who was just brilliant and you could talk through things with them. And today, AI lets you do that. I was telling you about my clone, but it just plugs into probably OpenAI and all that stuff. So you could ask it a myriad of very deep questions, and it'll have a shockingly personal conversation. I can say I'm having a really bad day. My creativity isn't there. I need to come up with a breakthrough idea and I'm at wit's end. Can you inspire me? Can you help me? Can you give me an idea? Can you at least give me, or I can have a bad day where I lost an account, I lost a deal, and I'm feeling really morose. And I'm not going to go home and tell my wife I'm a loser,
Right.
but I could tell my dad, Dad, I didn't do well today. I'm talking about the, if you recreated him, and I could say, Dad, I feel really worthless. And if I have the right dad, he would say, "You're not worthless. Failure's not permanent. Get on with it. You're a great guy, Jay. Just get back and believe in yourself," or whatever. And that would give me a whole renewed spirit. So I think it's got enormous psychological, emotional, uh, therapeutic value that people don't even realize because they've gotten so removed. And I think it can be very wonderful for the quality of the future human beings. Because right now, I think we're very insulated. We're loners. Most of us have lost connection with the family unit. It's nothing like it used to be. There's certain uh, there's certain cultures, the Hispanic culture and some of the Asian cultures are still very close, and they love age is venerable. It's not contemptuous. Here, a lot of young people have almost contemptuous disdain for age,
Yeah.
and then when they get to a certain age and then they die, it's almost it's a non-issue. I think that if we can reconnect with the loving influences that helped us become the positive we are. And again, the negative, that's another thing. Some people never had the ability to stand up to brutal people in their life. Maybe even for that, they want to basically, a lot of people don't mean to be, but they're passive aggressive.
Right.
Sometimes it's almost like, or you could do the equivalent of a 12 step where you could make up with your avatar of a deceased person who you had affection for, and maybe you reflect on the fact that you wished you had done something
Bring
different and now it's
closure
too
as
late.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it could be just like a 12-step program. So I haven't thought about it as deeply as you obviously have because it's your business, but I think it has profound positivity. I think it has profound therapeutic. I think it can enliven the meaning of a day, a life. I think it can be enormously beneficial when you're down. I think it could be, it will reinstill and reignite a sense of humanity and quality that I think is rapidly eroding in human beings. So I think if you pull it off correctly, you're going to do more for more people if they take full advantage of it. Is that the answer? That
No, that's exactly what we want to hear.
Yeah,
You
good.
have the right
Cool.
vision that we have at Reekolect, and that's what we want. We want the avatars that our users will be generating to grow with them, connect with them. And eventually, our vision is to one day have grandmother at Christmas telling her recipes, her jokes, in her same
And I think
voice and
that's a
tone.
profound. But I do think that the impact it can have is unimaginable, assuming you keep helping it evolve, grow, and dimensionalize itself. And I think when people start doing it, the only thing I think is very important, and I'm sharing with you an insight that I came up with from our own AI clone, that if you don't help people know how to ask it the best
Agree.
questions and interact with it in the most meaningful way, it becomes marginalized. So people need some help to get started in really reaping the fullest emotional and psychological benefit that it can offer them, because on their own they maybe don't know how. But you're going to basically say, hey, it'll be happy birthday, it'll welcome you in the morning, it'll say good night to you at night. You're going to have pre-programmed things that'll be automatic, and then as I understand it, the user can then customize it for scenarios that come out of their memory of the past.
Correct.
And that to me is a really good dyad.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good.
Absolutely. I appreciate
You're
that. So,
welcome.
could you say, Jay, that again, at least Recollect's mission to revolutionize the way we're connecting and remembering is a great mission?
Yeah, I think it's a great mission, but I think it has, I mean, there's very little today. I mean, there's so much breakthrough stuff, but it's not dealing with the human condition.
Right.
And the human condition, again, I'm worried about people becoming so disconnected with one another, disconnected with true humanity, obsessed with having their BMW, obsessed with things that are not really relevant to quality of life. And one of the things that are relative to quality of life is connectivity to people that inspire us,
That we love.
understand us, appreciate us. And in our very competitive world, that's becoming less and less. So I think it has unimaginable, intangible benefits that are only the outer periphery are what you're talking about now. I think when people start fully using it, they're going to see improvements in their, in everything, their joy level, their passion, their balance, their self-worth and self-esteem, their humor, their ability to be better friends, parents, lovers, husbands, wives, contributors. And I think that will be a very wonderful crescendo effect. So I'm very encouraged for you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jay.
You're
Really
welcome.
appreciate that. So, Jay, thank you so much. One last thing that I just want to discuss. We do have a lot of entrepreneurs that do look at our podcast, up and coming. What little gold nugget could you leave with them when things get really tough and they really feel dismotivated? What can you leave as a piece of advice for those entrepreneurs that are up
Oh,
and
that's a good
coming?
question. Well, I've helped more than I can even count in more industries on more parts of the world. So what I think is that most entrepreneurs have a worldview that's very, very limited. All you know is all you've experienced or what you've read. It is very rare that an obstacle is permanent. There are so many optionality, so many alternative ways to do something, so many higher, safer, better ways to achieve a goal. But what happens with most entrepreneurs, there's three kinds of entrepreneurs. There's the entrepreneur that gets into business as a result of a life crisis. This has been more prevalent in things like real estate.
Right.
You get divorced, you know, you get downsized, you have a chemical or an alcohol problem, and you have nothing, and you're basically you've hit rock bottom, and you got to start over again. So you go into real estate. So it's not, you start with a negative image of yourself,
Right.
and you're sort of reactive. The other is you go into a business, but you don't always go into it to maximize its success, its asset value. You go into it because you don't want to be controlled by anybody. The last is the one I said, you're trying to build everything you can. But if everybody in business starts by saying grit, which is just hard, continuous work, isn't really the answer. It's better strategy, it's a better business model, it's a better reduction of concentration risks, meaning if you only have one source of revenue or you only have very few buyers, clients that are generating all your business, you have to be able to learn to think differently I created something many, many decades, not even years ago, Daniel. It was called funnel vision versus tunnel vision. Tunnel vision is what 90% of all entrepreneurs are struggled with. They don't even know it. It's all they only know what they know. They have modeled their business more likely than not out of everybody else in the same industry. They're not innovators in senses of finding different ways to reach the market, different ways to sell, different ways to uh, to gain advantage by having a facet of their business, product, service, people that stand out. They just sort of work very hard and they hope that works. And everybody else is working hard and hoping that works. So at most, if you're fortunate, you get incremental growth. But if you have a different strategy, different business model, if you learn, as I told you about my career, how other more successful industries, companies do it, and your company and your industry doesn't, you start doing things that are far higher performing, then you very rarely get stuck. There's always an answer to everything. We have a book we created years ago, and it was called How to Get the Money for Your Great Idea or Startup. And the subtitle was, And What to Do If You Can't. There's always something you can do if you can't. There's always something to do if you're facing an obstacle. There's always something you can do if you're having a setback. And if you don't know what that is because you've been living in a vacuum, you've got to break out and you've got to understand what's possible. I tell everybody the greatest advantage you can have is to learn everything you can about everything you can, and most notably about things you're not interested in. And we used to do seminars, and once we got the trust of somebody, after about the second day, when they had bookstores, we'd go to the bookstore and we'd buy every book and magazine on nonfiction topics. And I would say, "Okay, Daniel, like, do you have a hobby, Daniel?" I'm asking.
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, man, several hobbies.
Give me your primary one.
I like to build. I really
Okay.
like to
You
build
like things with
very
your hands.
complex. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So if I knew that, I would give you a book on cake decorating or macrame or or uh, what is it, origami or something that was so out of your realm and force you to read two chapters or two articles and come back and tell me one idea you gained that could actually be applied to your business. Because people don't understand. You and I are having this conversation. You and I are here in my office on the outskirts of a very cool private airport. We are in Torrance, California. We have a certain reality. At the same time, there are people in other cities, there are people in other countries, there are people having other realities. And the more you learn about things you don't understand, the more power and the more optionality and the more possibilities you possess. But most people get stuck just basically saying, well, all I want to learn about is what I do, or all I want to learn about is how I market. And that's only one way. There might be 1,000 ways you can market. There might be 1,000 different industries you could borrow from. But if you only give yourself permission to work hard, grit, and do what everybody else does, and you have any hope of outperforming by anything more than little incremental ways, it won't happen. And if you have setbacks, and when you have a setback, your reference mode is what everyone else does and what you have been exposed to, which is usually limited, then you can be defeated. If you're like me, it's like, okay, it's an irritation, but there's very little that happens that there isn't a solution.
Mm.
There is very little that happens, there isn't an opportunity in it. But if you don't have the worldview to see it, then you're down for the count, as opposed to just dusting yourself off and bouncing back. So there's my little 2 cents
So
worth.
I got from that. So you need to expand your realm of what's possible, and
Yeah,
by
and you can't do
exploring.
it just hoping and looking for divine
I
intervention.
agree.
You got to do the
Agree.
work.
Absolutely. Do the work and definitely always find a way to get out and not get stuck in that challenge and
That
that
is
obstacle.
correct.
Absolutely. Well, Jay, listen, I really appreciate you so much for having this interview with us. It's been nothing but a pleasure. I'll go ahead and put on this podcast where people can find you. But if you'd
That's
like to
great.
give on the camera, they can go to the main website.
Sure, we have a nice website, abraham.com, and
Okay.
it's got a lot of resources on it. You know, and if you're big enough, you can find me there. And if not, you'll get a lot of of support. But the key to this is there's always a better way. You just have to find it.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jay. All right. Take care until next
My
time.
pleasure.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us for this episode. And stay tuned.